The soldiers laughed when they saw her. She was crawling on all fours like a wild dog. Her clothes were dirty rags, her hair was full of knots, and her gray skin was covered in dust. She didn't talk, didn't cry, didn't scream. She just searched the ground for food like a hungry animal. They called her thing Beast, and even threw bones near her feet. And every time, she jumped forward and snatched it. Chewing without care, without fear, Ethan stood at a distance, watching quietly. He was a human supply officer on the edge of this small alien outpost. He had seen war. He had seen pain. But this was different. This wasn't a prisoner. This wasn't an enemy. This was a little girl, no older than 8 or 9. She had glowing blue eyes. But they weren't bright. They were empty. Eyes that had seen too much pain, too much fear. He watched her dig through trash, biting into cold metal scraps by mistake, and still. She didn't cry. "Don't get too close," one of the guards warned. "Laughing, she bites," said another, tossing a piece of dry bread near her. She lunged like a starving dog, grabbing it before the rats did. The soldiers found it funny. Ethan didn't. His hands curled into fists. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept seeing her in his mind eating trash, licking her fingers, eyes wide and empty. She was just a child. Why was no one helping her? Why was she treated like a joke? The next morning, Ethan returned to the same spot. He held a small packet of food from the supply center. Warm rice, soft bread, and a little water bottle. The girl was there, hiding under a broken wall. She watched him silently, her body half inside a pile of wreckage. Ethan didn't throw the food. He didn't shout. He didn't laugh like the others. He simply knelt down, placed the food on the ground slowly. Then he sat, just a few steps away, waiting at. First, the girl didn't move. She stared at the packet like it might explode. She sniffed the air like a scared animal. Then, slowly, she crawled forward. Her hands shook as she touched the warm packet. She opened it, took one bite, and her entire body froze. She had never tasted warm food in a long time. Her lips trembled, her eyes blinked quickly. And without warning, tears rolled down her cheeks, but she made no sound. It's just silent tears falling onto her shaking hands. Ethan didn't speak. He just sat there, watching, his heart breaking a little with each second. How long had she been living like this? How many people had passed her by without even caring? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a clean napkin. He held it out gently. She flinched, then paused. And for the first time, she reached forward, not to snatch but to touch his hand. Her fingers were thin, bony, and cold, but her touch was soft, careful, like someone testing if the world was real or a dream. Ethan whispered, "You don't have to eat like that anymore." The girl looked up, eyes locked onto his face. Not animal eyes, no, but eyes of a child. Eyes full of questions, confusion, and a tiny spark of hope. From a distance, the soldiers watched. They laughed again. "Careful, Ethan," one joked. "She might think you're food," but Ethan didn't care. He was looking at something they couldn't see. He wasn't feeding an animal. He was saving a soul. And in that one small moment, everything changed. Not for the world. Not for the war, but for her and for him. Because when Ethan held out his hand, he didn't just offer food. He offered dignity. And that was something no one had ever given her before. The next morning, Ethan returned, holding another warm meal in his hands. His footsteps were light, careful not to scare her. The alien girl was hiding again, curled up under the same broken wall. Her eyes peeked from behind a crack in the stone, watching him approach. She didn't run. She didn't growl. She remembered him. Ethan smiled softly and sat down again, placing the food between them. He didn't move any closer. He just waited. Letting her come on her own, she crawled out slowly. But this time, not like an animal. This time, her steps were slower, more thoughtful. She stopped in front of the food and looked at him. He nodded once. That was enough. She opened the packet gently and took a bite. But this time, she didn't cry, she chewed, looking at Ethan like she was trying to understand him. Who was he? Why was he doing this? Was it another trap, or was he really different from the others? Ethan didn't say much. He just watched with calm eyes. He noticed how her hands trembled slightly less today. He noticed she wasn't hiding behind her arms anymore. She sat upright, her back still tense but no longer hunched like a cornered creature. "Do you have a name?" he asked softly. She flinched, her eyes darted to the ground, unsure. Then slowly, she raised one finger and pointed at her own chest. "Sira," she whispered, her voice dry and broken. It was the first word she had spoken to anyone in a very long time. Ethan smiled. "That's a beautiful name," he said. She blinked at him, unsure if she should believe that. No one had ever called her anything but beast or thing, but now someone said her name like it meant something good. "Mine's Ethan," he added, tapping his chest. "Sira," she repeated again. "Quieter, Ethan," she said next, trying the word out like a puzzle. And for a brief moment, the space between them felt a little warmer. Later that day, Ethan walked into the officer's tent. He asked, "Who is the alien girl near the fence?" They laughed. "The one who eats like a dog." "She's nobody," said a man with a smirk. "No record, no ID, no species tag," said another. "Probably dumped during the last raid, some war orphan useless." Ethan frowned. "She has a name," he said sharply. The room fell silent. "For a moment, she told me her name is Sira." A few officers raised their eyebrows. "She speaks?" one asked, surprised. Ethan nodded. "She remembers," he added. "And she's just a kid, not an animal." They brushed it off. Told him not to waste his time. But Ethan didn't listen. Something in his heart told him this girl mattered. She wasn't just another victim. She had survived something horrible. And now she was still trying to live. That night he returned again. This time with more than food. He brought a clean blanket, a small lamp, and a soft toy someone had left. Behind, Sira looked at the toy with wide eyes, confused but curious. Ethan placed it beside her gently. "It's for you," he said. She picked it up slowly and held it to her chest like it was treasure. Her fingers trembled around it, but she didn't let go. She didn't speak much. But her eyes said enough. They were no longer empty. They were watching, learning, searching. She started to mimic Ethan, sitting the way he sat when he folded his legs. She tried the same. When he touched his chest and said Ethan, she would touch hers and say Sira. It became their game, simple, slow, but powerful, but not. Everyone liked what Ethan was doing. Two soldiers whispered near the fire. "Why is he wasting food on that thing?" "He's getting too soft," said one. "Maybe he wants a pet," laughed another. Ethan heard them, but didn't react. He wasn't doing this for them. He was doing this because no one else would. He went to his room that night and opened his old datapad. He started researching alien languages, trying to match the name Sira with known refugee camps. He searched images, scanned old records, but he found nothing. No birth record, no family, no species file. It was like she didn't exist at all, but he knew she did. She was real. She had eyes that cried, a voice that whispered, and now, a small smile that waited for him every morning for the first time in months. Sira sat next to someone. She didn't eat from the ground. She didn't crawl in fear. She sat cross-legged on a piece of cloth Ethan gave her. They didn't talk much, but they didn't have to, because sometimes trust begins not with words, but with a touch, a look, a quiet moment under a dying sky, where one human chose to hold out his hand, and one lost alien girl slowly, quietly reached back. Sira no longer hid behind rubble. She waited for Ethan now, every morning. In the same spot, not on all fours, not like an animal. She sat with her legs crossed. The small stuffed toy still clutched tightly to her chest when she saw him. Her eyes lit up not with fear, but with something else, something warmer, something closer to hope. Ethan always brought food, water, and sometimes small things like a wooden comb or a flower he found by the roadside. Each time, Sierra would take the gift with both hands, gently and carefully. She never snatched, never begged, but she always looked him in the eyes now. She was changing. Not because she was given things, but because she was being treated like she mattered. One evening, as the sun faded into cold shadows, Ethan stayed longer. He sat beside her, quietly sketching. In his notebook, Sierra watched him curiously, her head tilted like a bird. "What are you doing?" she asked. Ethan looked up, surprised. It was the longest sentence she had ever spoken to him. "I'm drawing," he said with a smile. "Drawing what?" she asked. Moving closer, he turned the page toward her. A simple pencil sketch of her sitting with the toy in her arms. Sierra gasped. Her fingers brushed the paper slowly. "That's me," she whispered. "Yes." Ethan nodded. "You." She looked at the drawing again. Then up at the sky. "Draw the stars," she said suddenly, her voice soft but sure. Ethan paused. "The stars?" "Yes," she nodded, her eyes locked on the growing night sky. "Draw the ones from home." Ethan blinked. "Home." Sierra nodded slowly. "They were blue and gold," she whispered, eyes distant. "Two suns, one moon, and singing lights." She closed her eyes and whispered something in a strange language, low, musical, like a lullaby. Ethan felt a chill. She remembered, not everything, but something real, something personal. Where was this place? He asked. Gently, Sierra shook her head. "I don't know," she said, "but I see it. When I sleep," her fingers clutched the stuffed toy tighter, "and I hear my mother's song." Ethan leaned forward. "Do you remember her name?" She hesitated, then slowly whispered, "Araluna." It sounded beautiful, like wind over water. Ethan wrote it down in his notebook. He would search the name later, just like he'd done with Sierra. But something in his heart told him this wasn't just a story. This was a clue. She wasn't just a lost child. She came from somewhere special. That night, Ethan searched every archive he could access. He typed in the name, Araluna. He cross-checked stars with twin suns and one moon. Nothing came up in human maps. But then, buried deep in old alien migration records, he found a match. System Tivrisnine, known as the Singing Constellation Inhabitants, wiped out during the War of the Silent Suns. 12 years ago, he leaned back, breath caught in his chest. Could she be from there? Was Sierra one of the last? The next morning, he returned with a printed star chart of the Tavera system. He laid it on the ground beside her. Her eyes widened. Her small fingers reached out and touched it gently. "That one," she said, pointing. "That was above our house." Ethan's heart pounded. She wasn't guessing. She knew. "You're from Tivris 9. Key said softly. Sierra nodded slowly. "But everyone's gone," she whispered. "The fire came from the sky." Then the silence. Ethan didn't speak. He didn't have to. He just placed his hand over hers, and she didn't pull away. Sierra began to talk more after that. Not everything made sense. Some words were strange, and her grammar broken. But her memories came in flashes. A soft purple tree outside her home. A glowing fish that floated above water. The taste of warm root juice made by her mother, and the feeling of safety. Before it all turned to ash, she wasn't just some refugee child. She was a survivor of a forgotten world, a piece of history that no one remembered except her. And now? Ethan, but not everyone was happy with this bond. A soldier named Briggs watched them every day with narrowed eyes. "She's dangerous," he told the commander. "No records, no ID. Just strange words and glowing eyes. The commander frowned. "If she causes trouble, we'll remove her," he said coldly. Ethan overheard the warning. He knew he had to act soon. Sierra wasn't safe here, not forever. He had to find a way to protect her, because now he knew she wasn't just a child. She was a key, a voice from a lost world, a memory wrapped in skin and sorrow. And he was the only one who cared enough to listen. The skies above the outpost turned dark that morning, not because of clouds, but because of something heavier. Tension, suspicion, fear. Briggs, the soldier who always eyed Sierra with hate, stood. At the command tent, "She's dangerous," he said again, louder this time. "She speaks in weird tongues, stares at the stars like she's planning something." The commander rubbed his temples. "She's just a child," he said. "No." Briggs growled. "She's a weapon waiting to wake up." Ethan heard this conversation from outside. His stomach twisted. They were planning to remove her. Remove was the word they used when they didn't want to say kill. He had to do something fast that evening. Ethan went to Sierra early. She was sitting near a small tree, humming quietly. The tune sounded like the one she sang before, a lullaby from her lost world. "Sierra," Ethan said gently. She looked up and smiled softly, but then she paused. Her smile faded. She sensed something. Her glowing blue eyes looked toward the barracks. "Bad men," she whispered. "They're watching." Ethan sat beside her, trying not to look nervous. "You remember more now?" He asked. Sierra nodded. "I remember." "The walls of our home," she said. "Tall with pictures that moved when you touched them." Ethan was amazed. "Like living paintings." She nodded again. "And I remember light. Inside me. It sings." Ethan blinked. "Inside you?" She looked down at her chest. "It's quiet now, but sometimes it wants to come out." She placed her small hand over her heart. "And when I'm scared, it glows." He had seen her eyes glow faintly once, but now it made sense. There was something alien inside her. Something sleeping. That night, it happened. Briggs didn't wait for permission. He took 2 men and crept toward Sierra's shelter while most soldiers slept. Ethan was just returning from the supply depot when he saw the shadows. He dropped the boxers and ran. "Stop," shouted. Briggs turned with his weapon raised. "This is for safety," he shouted. "She doesn't belong here." Sierra woke to the noise. She backed away into the corner of her shelter, eyes wide with fear. The toy in her hand fell to the floor. Briggs stepped forward, aiming his gun. That's when it happened. A soft hum filled the air, then a light from Sierra's chest. A glowing pulse, blue and gold, like the twin suns she spoke of. It spread through her body like waves of energy. Her hair floated slightly, lifted by an invisible force. The ground trembled under her feet. The air shimmered. Briggs screamed. He dropped his gun and fell back, shielding his eyes. Ethan rushed in and stood between them. "Sierra, it's okay. I'm here," he said, raising his hands. The glow slowed, then softened. Sierra was breathing hard, her body shaking. But she looked at Ethan, and the light calmed. Silence fell. Briggs crawled backward, eyes wide. "She's a weapon," he gasped. "No," Ethan said firmly. "She's a girl, and she was defending herself the next day." The whole outpost buzzed with whispers. People talked about the glowing girl. Some were afraid, some curious. But Ethan stood in front of the commander and told the truth. "She saved herself," he said. "If Briggs had shot, she'd be dead. That light. It's not a weapon. It's a part of her, something old, maybe forgotten." The commander wasn't happy, but he couldn't deny the truth. The girl hadn't attacked first, and Ethan's report matched what others had seen. Still, the order came down. She is to be watched. If anything happens again, she's to be removed from the base. Ethan left the office in silence, but inside, he burned with anger. They still didn't see her as a person. They only saw the power, not the pain. That night, Ethan sat beside Sierra in the dark. They looked up at the stars together. Sierra was quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, "It happened before." Ethan turned. "What did?" "The light," she said. "When the fire came from the sky, my mother held me, and she said, 'Sing.' With it, I didn't understand. But then everything went white." Ethan's eyes widened. "You survived, because of the light." Sierra nodded slowly. "It protected me, but then I woke up. Alone." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone now," he said. "I'm here. And I'm not leaving." Sierra looked at him. Her lip trembled. She didn't say anything. But she reached out and held his hand, tightly. Something ancient was inside her, something powerful but scared. And now that it had been awakened, others would come looking. Ethan didn't know what was coming, but he knew one thing for sure. He would protect Sierra, even if it meant standing against his own kind, because she wasn't a weapon. She was a lost girl, and maybe the last hope of her kind. The outpost was not the same anymore after the glowing incident. Everyone looked at Sierra differently, some with fear, some with wonder. But no one ignored her now. Ethan did his best to keep her safe. He kept her inside during patrols. He taught her new words. They read books together under the light of a broken lamp. Sierra smiled more often now, but the spark in her chest, the strange light tit, hadn't returned since that night. And yet, something had changed in the sky above the base. A long-range scanner caught a signal, a ship, approaching fast. 3 hours later, a small silver vessel landed quietly on the edge of the rocky zone. It didn't belong to the military. No flags, no IDs. It looked old, almost ancient. But still alive with humming energy, a tall figure stepped out. His robe shimmered like smoke. His face hidden under a hood. But what caught everyone's attention were his eyes. Not human, not machine. They glowed gold and didn't blink. "I'm here for the girl," he said. His voice was calm but echoed strangely. Like a whisper through wind, the soldiers raised their weapons. "Who are you?" The commander barked, but the figure ignored him. He took one slow step forward and looked around the camp. "I felt her awaken. The song of the light reached me. I know what she is." Ethan stepped forward, heart pounding. He stood between the man and Sierra's shelter. "She's not going anywhere," he said firmly. The hooded man tilted his head. "You are the one who fed her. The one who didn't fear her." Ethan didn't answer. He didn't trust this stranger. The man raised one hand, not in threat, but in peace. "I am called Velthar," he said. "I come from the archives of the Outer Ring. We protect memories of lost species." He looked toward Sierra's shelter again. "She is the last of the era, no, the Starborn singers." Ethan frowned. "Starborn singers." Velthor nodded slowly. Her kind did not fight with weapons. They used song. Song that healed, protected, remembered. He looked directly into Ethan's eyes. "That glow you saw. It is not a weapon. It is a memory, a living force passed through generations. She carries it now, alone, inside the shelter." Sierra sat still. She heard the voice, and something inside her trembled. Hush. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the feeling. The voice reminded her of home, of a time before the fire, of her mother's arms. And the lullaby. She stepped out slowly, holding Ethan's hand. Velthor's golden eyes softened when he saw her. He knelt on one knee. "Sierra of the Airlay," he said. "You are not forgotten." Sierra didn't reply. But the glowing light in her chest returned. Not bright, not dangerous. Just a soft shimmer like morning dew on grass. Velthor held out a small crystal. It floated above his palm, glowing blue. "A memory shard," he said. Your people stored their history in light. This one is yours." Sira hesitated. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "It's okay," he said. She reached forward and touched the shard. The moment her fingers made contact, her body jolted not from pain, but from memory. Images filled her mind. Her mother's face, smiling, a city of music, towers that sang in the wind, children dancing under twin suns, and the day it ended, fire raining from the sky. Her mother holding her, "Sing with it," she had whispered. Then, darkness. Sira fell to her knees. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I remember," she whispered. "I remember everything." Velthor bowed his head. "The last voice of your people has returned, but the soldiers still didn't understand. She's dangerous." Briggs shouted again. "She could destroy us all." Velthar stood. "She could save you," he said calmly. "Her song was made to protect, to bring peace where there is pain." The commander looked uneasy. He wasn't sure what to believe. But Ethan stepped forward. "She's not a threat," he said. "She's a girl, a survivor, and she's my responsibility." Velthor looked at both of them. "She needs protection. Others will come. There are those who destroyed her kind, and they don't know she survived." Ethan nodded. "Then they'll have to come through me." Sira looked up at him, her small fingers wrapped around the memory shard. "I don't want to run anymore," she said. Ethan knelt beside her. "Then we'll stand together." The outpost stood silent that night. But somewhere in the stars, a signal had been sent. The last starborn singer had awakened, and now the galaxy would hear her voice again. The stars were quiet, but inside that silence, something stirred. Far beyond the outpost, far beyond known space, a signal moved like a ghost through the dark. A soft melody, ancient and beautiful. It was the echo of a child's memory. Sira's voice had awakened something, and someone was listening. Ethan stood on the roof of the barracks, staring into the sky. It had been 2 days since Velthar gave Sira the memory shard. She was different, now not just in spirit, but in presence. She walked taller, spoke with more clarity. And her eyes, those glowing blue eyes, were deeper, wiser, like they remembered centuries. But Ethan also noticed the change in the air. The way birds no longer flew overhead, the way the wind carried silence instead of sound. Something was coming. Down below, Sira sat inside a small room Ethan had cleaned for her. She traced shapes on the table with her finger symbols from her lost world. Velthor watched her silently. The signal was sent when she touched the shard. He said she didn't mean to. But the moment she remembered, the stars listened. Ethan frowned. "Who's listening?" Velthar looked out the window. "The ones who destroyed her people. The Kaiser Dominion." Ethan had heard the name in history files. A race that erased planets, conquered systems. Not for power but to silence cultures they feared. They believed emotion made species weak. So they hunted those who sang, who loved, who remembered. Sira's people had been the loudest voices, so the Kaiser silenced them. Now, they knew one voice remained, and they were coming to finish the job. That evening, the alert siren blared. Across the outpost, a ship had entered orbit and registered. Silent, massive, black as night, sharp like a blade, it didn't send a message. It just hovered above the atmosphere. Watching soldiers ran to stations. "Weapons ready?" The commander shouted orders. But most had never seen real combat, not against this kind of threat. Ethan grabbed his rifle, but his thoughts were on Sira. He rushed to her room. She was already standing, her hands glowing faintly. "I feel them," she whispered. "They hate me. Not because I'm dangerous, but because I remember." Ethan knelt beside her. "I won't let them take you," he said. "You're not alone." Velthor entered behind them. "We cannot fight them directly," he said, "but we can protect." The voice, suddenly, a bolt of red light fell from the sky. It slammed into the outer wall. Explosions shook the camp. Screams followed. And smoke rose into the air. The Kaiser had started their attack. Sierra stepped forward, eyes glowing brighter. Ethan grabbed her shoulder. "No," he said. "You're not a weapon, but I can help." She replied, not with fire, but with light. She stepped into the open, and then she sang. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was soft, like the wind before rain. A tune full of sorrow. A song of a child who lost her world but still had hope. The air shimmered around. Her wounded soldiers stopped crying. Fear slowly faded from their eyes. Even the flames seemed to quiet as her voice rose higher. And then, a miracle happened. The shield generator, which had been damaged earlier, powered back on. Glowing blue energy surrounded the base, as if the song had awakened the machines. Valthor gasped. It's the song of memory. Her people could not only heal hearts, they could connect with the world around them, even the systems that forget their own purpose. Sierra kept singing, her small hands raised. And in the sky above, the black ship paused. Inside the Kaiser vessel, cold commanders stared at the screen. The energy levels were rising, but not from weapons. From her, they recognized the frequency. Ancient and forbidden, shut her down. One of them growled. Now a new beam of red light shot down directly at her. Ethan screamed, "Sierra!" He ran toward her, but the light never hit. A shield formed around her glowing. Gold and blue, like a dome of music. It wasn't technology. It was her. The beam hit the dome and vanished. Like rain swallowed by the sea, the Kaiser ship began to shake. Systems inside overloaded. Their control panels sparked. "Retreat," the commander snarled. "She's awakened fully." And just like that, the ship turned and vanished into deep space. Silence returned. The fires were out. The stars above were still. Sierra stood quietly in the center of the camp, her glow fading slowly. She looked exhausted, but peaceful. Ethan reached her and caught her before she fell. "I told you," she whispered. "I'm not a weapon. You're not," he said. "You're a miracle." That night, the camp lit candles instead of sirens. Even the soldiers who once mocked her now watched her with respect. The alien girl who once ate from the dirt had saved them all, and far away in the cold parts of space, the Kaiser were whispering one word with fear: Starborn. The sky was clear now. No enemy ships, no explosions. Just stars shining quietly above the small outpost. But the people below were not the same anymore. Sierra sat under the same broken wall where Ethan had first found her. But she no longer looked like the girl who ate like an animal. Her back was straight. Her skin was cleaner, brighter. Her eyes still glowed, but with strength, not fear. Ethan sat beside her. Quietly, he didn't speak. He just looked at her with the same calm respect he had shown from day one. Valthor stood behind them, watching the stars. "The Kaiser won't forget what happened," he said. "They'll return, maybe not tomorrow, but someday." Ethan nodded slowly. But now the galaxy knows Sarah exists, and she's not alone anymore. News of the Starborn child spread quickly. The outpost received messages from worlds Ethan had never heard of. Some offered help, some sent questions, some sent warnings. But one message stood out, from the Council of Terran Unity, the High Human Government. They wanted to meet the girl, not to hurt her, but to ask, "Can she help others like she helped you?" Sierra sat in silence when Ethan told her. She looked down at her hands. "I never asked to be a voice," she said. "I just wanted to be safe." "I know," Ethan replied, "but your voice saved lives. Maybe it can save more for days." She thought quietly. She walked around the camp. Soldiers who once feared her now greeted her kindly. One gave her a flower. Another called her brave. Children followed her with wide eyes. To them, she was a hero, soft-spoken, small, and glowing like a dream. Then one evening, Sierra sat beside Ethan, holding the same stuffed toy he had given her weeks ago. "Do you remember how I looked the first time you saw me?" she asked. Ethan nodded slowly. "You were scared," he said. "You were hungry, but you were never less than a person." Sierra smiled, and you held out your hand. When no one else did, she looked up at him. "Maybe someone else out there is eating from the dirt right now?" Afraid, alone, waiting for a hand. Ethan said nothing. But the small smile on his face said everything. The next day, Velthor prepared the ship. Sierra would travel to the Central Peace Station, a place where leaders from many worlds gathered, a place full of cameras, politics, and expectations. But she wouldn't go alone. Ethan was going with her, not as her bodyguard, but as her family. The outpost soldiers lined up as they walked to the ship. Not one of them laughed. They stood in silent respect. The girl who once had nothing was now leaving as a symbol of something much bigger. Inside the ship, Sierra looked out the window. Stars stretched out in every direction. She placed her hand against the glass and whispered softly, "I remember you." The stars seemed to shimmer in reply. Velthar turned from the controls. "You don't have to speak for anyone," he said. "But if you do, your voice may change everything." Sierra nodded. Her hands glowed softly. Not because she was afraid, but because she was ready. The peace station was huge, floating between systems, like a moon carved by engineers and diplomats. When they landed, the hall was already full. Reporters, ambassadors, officers, all waiting to see the girl who silenced a warship with song. Ethan held her hand as they walked forward. The room quieted. Every eye turned to her. She stepped up to the platform, alone now. Just a girl in simple clothes, holding a worn-out toy. She didn't read a speech. She didn't shout. She just closed her eyes and sang. The same song from before, soft, sad, and beautiful. A song of loss, a song of survival. A song that remembered home, and as her voice echoed through the chamber, some cried, some stood frozen, but no one left because they all heard it. Not just the melody, but the truth, that even in war, even in pain, there is a chance to begin again. When her song ended, Sierra opened her eyes and whispered, "I am not a weapon. I am not a tool. I am a child who remembers. And I want no one to be forgotten again." The room exploded into applause. Not because of power, but because of grace. The kind only someone who once crawled through dirt could truly show. Back on the outpost wall, where Ethan first saw her, the place was quiet now, but a small plaque stood there. It read, "This is where a human held out his hand and the galaxy began to heal." The end.